You can never have a brand new beginning, but you can create a brand new ending.
I'm here with a great friend of mine today, Eddie Andrews.
Current role that I fulfill would be that of Deputy Mayor City of Cape Town. My dreams, I want to be the very best version of myself. So I will always be appreciative of sport. And that sort of it gave me that pathway to a different future.
Absolutely. I asked the gangsters, why did you join a gang? And they give me exactly the same reasons that you just gave me as to why you joined a rugby team.
Regardless where you start, with the right mindset and discipline and focus, you can achieve success. To me, that is important.
If you were face to face with one of my gang leaders right now, what would you say to them? Sure, that's exactly the perfect thing that you could say. So welcome to the Gang Pastor podcast. I'm here with a great friend of mine today, Eddie Andrews. Eddie has many hats that he wears. Why don't you introduce yourself and let's get the show on the road, as the saying goes.
Yeah, Andy. So I think the current role that I fulfill would be that of Deputy Mayor City of Cape Town.
Amazing.
I think the fact that rugby has not scarred me too much, there's still some brain cells left there somewhere. And it's lovely to be with you here today.
It's great to have you here, my brother. It really is. So, Eddie, why don't you tell us, just give us a quick summary of your background, kind of the early years, what it was like as a young man prior to the changes 30 years ago. What changes have you seen since then? And then we'll start talking about rugby and fun things after that.
And so I'm married to November this year. I'll be married to one woman for the past 26 years.
Amazing.
And we have 3 children. My eldest, Eden, my son, Joel, and the youngest one, Jesse. And we're just passionate about our city, passionate about our country, and really want to be the best versions of ourselves and contribute in a meaningful way to society. So that's who I am. That's important to me. Yeah. If the family were here, they would argue that should be the only priority. But also we recognize that we are placed for purpose. And for me, now being involved in the public sector for the past sort of 15 years after I've retired from rugby, I see that as an opportunity to effect real change, sort of navigate the bureaucracy of it all, and to have impact in communities that actually need it a lot more.
Yeah. And I'm one of your biggest fans. I love seeing what you do. I've always thought, if the shooting starts in Manenberg and you're there, I'm going to stand behind you because you're bigger than me.
I'll stop the bullets.
100%. No, but in all seriousness, I love what you do. And irrespective of political party, etc., I can't even vote in this country anyway, so it's irrelevant to me. But I love what you do, and I know you, and I know your heart, and I love your heart. Your heart is for the community, and that's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about rugby for a second, and then we'll go talk about gangsterism. The two are really similar or really different. I'm not quite so sure, but you've seen in social media over the last few weeks a little bit of hoorah about the Manenberg rugby girls, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us about your rugby background. Tell us about some of the most fun things you did. You still are a young man, but you were a young man, young coloured man from Mitchell's Plain. And rugby, I'm assuming, was a significant part of your way out, so to speak. Is that a fair comment?
It is a fair comment. Okay. I think for me, not having played rugby at school, not being sort of a player at a prominent rugby playing school itself was a barrier. And I think what really was important for me was that looking around and seeing what's happening and asking yourself the question, do I choose a different path or do I conform to the social ills? And rugby afforded me that healthy alternative. And I think that is what I appreciate, reflecting on the sport. But more importantly, that it also gives you discipline. It gives you focus.
So true.
I think that's, if I look at my entire street where I grew up out in Mitchell's Plain, Whitehall Close, and on the corner there was one sort of family, they were doing some very interesting stuff there. And the kids that after sort of I left and I got married, they chose a different path, a bad path. And some of them have passed on, have ended up in prison. That some will always be appreciative of sport. And that sort of it gave me that pathway to a different future.
Absolutely. You know what? I'll come back to that in a second. But what age did you start playing rugby?
Very late. I at school, I attended Springbok High School. I played soccer, hockey, and cricket. And so when I left the school, I asked myself, what else can I play? Because I put on some weight. I was not as agile as I wanted to be for hockey and soccer. And I literally called Western Province Rugby Football Union. I said, hey guys, this is where I stay in Mitchell's Plain. Where's my nearest rugby club? And they said, well, there's a club around the corner, Mitchell's Plain Rugby Club. And I started playing then. At that time, Andy, I was 18 years of age.
And that's an incredible thing, because for so many of the young guys and girls who are 16, 17, 18, perhaps have been involved in gangsterism, perhaps have had a child, perhaps have been drug addicts and gotten themselves clean, etc. And if they're 16, 17, 18 or 19, they could still start playing rugby like you potentially played for the Springboks.
You can never have a brand new beginning, but you can create a brand new ending.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that, to me, regardless of how old you are or where you find yourself, you can start over. I think that's a
100%.
very, very, very important message. You can look at your circumstance and say, oh, it will not happen. I won't see that brand new ending, a good ending for me. Or you can just choose it.
Yep.
And every single day, take a step towards it. So I think that, to me, was something that I still hold on to this very day.
100%. You know what? I wasn't much of a rugby player. I played rugby. My school was a rugby school, so we all played rugby, and I played reasonably well and was captain of a few teams and things like that. But rugby wasn't my main sport. Swimming was probably my main sport at school. Over the last few weeks, since I've got a little bit of attention over the Manenberg Rugby Girls, I've had a lot of rugby teams approach me and say, "Hey, will you help support and promote us, etc." And so I've stood with a number of them in training over the last couple of weeks, and I've said I was a great rugby player. And they said, "Oh, great. What position do you play?" I said, "I played left, right, out." They said, "Oh, we haven't heard of that one."
I've not heard of it either.
I was left, right, out of the team because I was cut. But anyway, you know what? I had a beautiful moment about a week ago with a group of young men from Heathfield High School. I'm going to put a little clip up about them in the next few days, actually. And I said to them, I just ran into them at this rugby tournament. They came to me and they said, "Are you the guy on TV or on TikTok?" And I said, "Oh, that's my twin brother. He's much prettier than me." And we got chatting. And I said to them, I said, "What is rugby to you?" And they said, "It's life, it's discipline, it's brotherhood, it's protection, it's family,
it's
etc."
community.
And I stopped and I literally had tears in my eyes. And I said, "Boys, I got to tell you something." I said, at every single gang funeral that I have the privilege of speaking at, I ask the gangsters, "Why did you join a gang?" And they give me exactly the same reasons that you just gave me as to why you joined a rugby team. Exactly. Like not even 50%, but exactly. So for me, that was actually a bit of a penny drop moment as to how important rugby and sport
as a health alternative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like radically so. Just hugely, hugely valuable. So what's the biggest lesson that rugby taught you?
Regardless where you start, with the right mindset and discipline and focus, you can achieve success. To me, that is important. I think often we think certain goals that we have, it's not something that we can achieve, it's not attainable, but it can be. It can be, depends entirely on you as an individual.
Yep.
And I think also for me, there are lots of lessons besides that one that I've also, if I reflect on as well, just having the diversity in a team environment and understanding each one. I mean, I was exposed to people from the Blue Bull setup, out in the Lion setup and the Free State, different communities, different cities, but understanding the culture as well. That to me was important. And to be mindful that we all come from different communities.
Yeah.
And how we integrate, that to me is important. So for me, just even the different cultures and how you can be a part of a team and come from different communities.
Yeah.
One thing that really shocked me to the core was the importance of greeting someone with a hand, looking him in the eye. And the first time I did that, my hand was crushed. And I realized you've got to go in hard and shake and grip, because it's part of that sort of the rugby culture and just being strong and firm. And then your teammate will have confidence in your ability. Somehow that's how it worked. And that's something that I take, another lesson that I take away from sport as well, being exposed to different cultures. It helps me develop as a South African.
Yeah, great lesson indeed. And just that equality, that ability to look somebody in the eye and see somebody else as equal and them see you as equal is such an empowering thing as well, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about my life or the area that I play around in, i.e. the Cape Flats and gangs and so on. And I'd love to get your perspective on some of the causes of gangsterism and some of the solutions and some of the things that you see as being perhaps beacons of hope in a pretty dark space.
Yeah. And if you look at South Africa and look at what happened during apartheid, where people were decanted out of those communities
Yeah,
and put in certain communities a lot more dense than, where they came from as well. It was ultimately a recipe for disaster.
of course.
There were no recreational amenities, and so people were unemployed, and they were in spaces that I think really contributed to what we see today in terms of gang-infested areas and conducting businesses unlawfully
Yeah,
and the like as well. And for me, that is something that we, at my department in the city of Cape Town, we're responsible for. How do you spatially transform that community? And I think you've also picked up, you can only transform the community if they trust you,
yeah,
if there's a relationship, and if they also part of the conversation. And for
correct.
me, that is important when you go into areas like Manenberg or anywhere in the Cape Flats where these communities are socially vulnerable. What can you do as a sphere of government to respond in a caring manner? Because often we have the enforcement component, right, which is needed, and we need to respect the rule of law. It's one of our core tenets of our democratic dispensation.
Yep.
But also, how do we locate programs that would be a diversion program for those kids and say, hey, here's the social ill, here's the healthy alternative.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that's what I'm focusing on, so you can give them a hand up.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a Scottish pastor friend of mine taught me many years ago that when you look in the eyes of a gangster or of a broken man, you're looking into the eyes of a 7-year-old boy. And the 7-year-old boy who's a hurt, broken young lad. And that's what I see with
Probably
every
without
single.
the father.
Totally. That's what I see with every single
Yeah.
gangster that I meet. And that's not to say that they all didn't have fathers. Many of them don't. But they were victims a long time before they became perpetrators of victimhood. And so you have to address that as part of the solution. You can't ignore that
Yeah.
and leave that. So that's absolutely right. One of the other areas that I know is, that you're passionate about in terms of transformation is economic transformation and economic
Yes.
transformation through entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
social entrepreneurship, etc., and particularly, if I can call it, township entrepreneurs or
Yes.
people who are entrepreneurs coming economically from the bottom. Not that it's
Yeah.
the bottom, but economically from the bottom. Tell me about some of the things that you've been involved in, some of the things that you've seen, whether involved with the city or whether not for profits, etc., that excite you in the spirit about that.
The informal economy is very important to us. I think we don't have all the data available to understand what is actually happening in the informal economy, but it's important. It is important because what is happening currently in those communities, we need to ask a question: how do we, as a sphere of government, how do we become a lot more enabling to
Yes.
activate those sort of economies? And then one, and then two, capacitate those individuals to be part of that sort of new economy that's now been scaled. One example would be, well, I'll mention two, for example, but one example would be the city's affordable rental flats program. We've seen these communities that they are building homes unlawfully. And so we've asked them, well, why are you building these homes unlawfully? And they said to us, well, thank you for asking. The reality is we don't have money for a professional person. The property is zoned incorrectly. And when you get an approved application, you then ask us to pay a development charge for the infrastructure.
Right.
And so we've launched a new program that responds directly to that local context,
Okay.
where we sort of waiving all the admin penalties. We've established a fund where they can make application. We've some seed funding of 20 million rand we've set aside for that. We're working closely with academia to capacitate the businesses to manage themselves sustainably and to register as an entity, because what they are doing, they are responding to a local need. What is that local need? Housing.
Yeah.
And why is it important? Because it's close to industries, and that's where they want to be. Why is it important to us as a city of Cape Town? Because it negates the need to get on a bus or a train or a taxi to get to that sort of economic opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's why we can now activate local opportunities there. And I think the one other thing that we're also doing now in terms of that space, to look at land and how do we dispose of land at a subsidized tariff to ensure that in business now buys that and invests there and deliver the product at an affordable tariff now that the land costing has been removed. That's a very important sector for us.
Yeah.
Because it speaks directly to the housing shortfall in the city of Cape Town. Another project would be the Early Child Development Center, the creches, the educares, the ECD centers, what they are doing. We have 2,620 educares that are not registered, but we know of in the city of Cape Town. 58% of them are not compliant.
Yeah.
58%. What does it mean? It means that there are kids being educated that don't have access to sufficient resources during the foundational phase. Very important phase. There's a big budget that national government has available for them. They can only access the budget if they are compliant. Who determines if they are compliant? Local government.
Yeah, right.
So we're wanting to help them and capacitate them. And that's a very important sector for us as well.
I can tell you that I know how important foundation phase is because I
Yeah.
repeated kindergarten.
Well, I mean,
I genuinely did. I repeated kindergarten.
Oh, well, so you've got to.
I think I failed finger painting.
Oh, you've got to go back to it. But I mean, even that program, and why it's important, because it speaks directly to the concern that we've spoken about early on, gangsterism. If you can capacitate that individual in the foundation phase,
Yeah.
they would learn all that he or she would ever require to become a more successful
Yeah.
human being as well. So that is why it is really important we get it right as a whole of society.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Eddie, let's pivot for a second. Funny story. Tell me a funny story. Tell me something that you experienced maybe on a rugby tour or something. I know what goes on tour stays on tour.
No, I was on the straight and narrow path. Andy, I do have one actually for you. The year was 2004. The Springboks that year, we just won the Tri-Nations, as it was called then,
Yep.
between Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. My wife and I went out for dinner, and the guy approaches me, and he says to me, "Hey, do you mind taking a photo?" And of course, I'm polite, and I'm like, "Yes," and I give my jacket to my wife, and I stand next to the guy, and he looks at me, and he says, "No, can you take a photo of me and my wife?"
I love it.
So whenever people ask me, "Can you take a photo?" I ask, "Would you want me to be in the photo?" And they say yes, I then join. I don't just assume that people know who I am, and then just to have a rite of passage to actually take a photo there with them.
You're a much more gracious man than me. Every single time I go surfing at Musenberg, there'll be a tourist there and with his husband or wife, whatever, and I'll say, "Hey, would you like a photo?" And they say, "Yeah." 100% of the time, I take at least 2 or 3 selfies alongside their photos.
Okay, so, I'll try that next time.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about your dreams.
Andy, my dreams, I want to be the very best version of myself. I was fortunate. I played sport. It gave me a platform.
Yep.
Now, as a deputy mayor, I'm able to effect real meaningful change in communities. And it's important that I sort of continue to push away barriers in communities that require it. So my biggest dream is that Eddie Andrews becomes the very best version of himself, have massive impact regardless of the platform that he is currently, where he finds himself.
Awesome. That's amazing. All right. 2 quick questions. Best life advice, best marriage advice.
Life advice, rule number 6, don't take yourself too serious. There's no rule number 1 to 5, by the way. Marriage advice, focus on the issue, not the person.
Oh, that's powerful. I thought you were going to say that your wife's middle name is the same as mine, which is she who must be obeyed.
No, look, it's 26 years. You need to read the room.
Yeah.
You need to understand that you are together for a lifetime, and whatever happens now is temporary. And I think that is important. And unfortunately for Jack and I, our love for God, our love for our communities, that centers us. But there will always be conflict, and how you manage those conflict moments, I think, is important.
Let's talk about faith for a second. So you're a man of faith. You're a man of Christian faith, which is awesome. Do you have a favorite verse?
A few. Let me just choose one. I'll take Revelations. Now, therefore, all things work together for good for those in Christ Jesus and are called according to his purpose.
That's awesome.
Sorry, Romans 8, not Revelations.
Yeah.
Romans 8. Oh, sorry, all theologians out there.
That's okay. This is a Cape Flats. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's awesome. Isn't that so true, right? Like all of the things that you get involved in, all of the things I have the privilege of getting involved in, etc. They all work out.
And you will fail.
Absolutely. I usually do, but God still somehow managed to come
The grace
through.
is sufficient.
100%. One of the most powerful things I ever heard as a young man, as a 15 or 16-year-old young man of faith, was the meaning of grace is God's riches at Christ's expense.
Sure.
Yeah, it was really
my other favorite verse, you never asked for it, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Psalm 23, verse 6, grace and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life. And I understand now more what that means, because mercy is not getting what you deserve, and grace is getting what you don't deserve.
So true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. If there was one thing that you could have written on your tombstone, what would it be?
Here lies he. I'm still finished that. Give me a year or two. Yeah, I think for me it comes back to what I said earlier on, placed for purpose and having impact. To me, that's important, that people recognize that whatever I did, there was impact. It wasn't for personal gain, but really just manipulating and exploiting the platform
Yeah.
To have impact, positive impact. That
Yeah.
is.
And isn't that a powerful thing, right? Like that you've got platform, you've got the ability to actually affect change to a totally different extent and in a different context. I have a slight version of that privilege, if you like, but it's actually a wonderful responsibility, and it's one that that a man like yourself wears heavily, because it's a massive responsibility. And what you don't want on your tombstone is he was a waste of time, or he didn't achieve the things that he set out to achieve.
Absolutely.
So so Eddie, what's your favorite quote?
And there's a guy by the name of Henry Hartman, and he says the following: that success is when preparation meets opportunity.
Isn't that true?
And I believe that life is a journey of sort of preparation, and you may only have one opportunity, but you have to be ready, and you need to embrace it and to ensure that ultimately you'll be placed for purpose.
That's awesome. That's powerful. I want to ask you one final thing, and that is, if you were face to face with one of my gang leaders right now, what would you say to them to encourage them?
You are loved.
Sure. That's exactly the perfect thing that you could say. Yeah.
You are loved.
Yeah.
Because if we recognize sort of the origins of all that sort of community, right? Because the father was absent.
Yeah.
And often on sort of most of the Cape Flats, you don't have the fathers being present. If they're present, they're not present.
Yeah.
And to hear them say from that fatherly figure, hey, I love you, I care for you, you're loved, that is missing. Yeah. And it's even in my own journey, I had to understand why there was an inability for my father to share that with me, because his father never told him that. So we can change it right now, create that brand new ending.
100%. But also, for so many of the fathers in the Cape Flats that are physically present, they're exhausted because they've got to work so hard just to put bread on the table at minimum wage, etc. So.
And that itself right there is loaded. And that is why those local economies in that community is so important.
Correct.
So you don't spend an enormous amount of time traveling to work.
Yeah.
Even my own family, when we were staying out in Mitchell's Plain, it took us every single day 3 hours in traffic to drop the kids at school and to get to work where I need to be. And then, of course, in total, about 450 kilometers every single week we drove just to get to school and to work. By the time you get home, you're tired, you're exhausted, you can't have quality family time as well. So it all adds up. And so that is why if we can create those spaces in those communities, it negates the need to travel and be on the road for a couple of hours every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Best Australian mullet haircut in Cape Town. Who wears it?
Actually, my son at the moment.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
What is it about his hair?
Look, each one to their own. What I love about Joel is that whatever he does it with confidence.
That's true.
So he'll wake up and I'm like, did you actually pay for that cut? He says, yes, I got to pay for that cut. So he loves it, but I think, it's a problem because when he plays cricket, the helmet doesn't fit well. But he loves it. So I would say that's my son, Joel.
I love it. Very, very good. Hey, listen, it's been great fun. It's been great fun having a chat with you. I look forward to doing more and to having more. And I just want to say thank you to you. I want to say thank you for your service. I want to say thank you for spending countless nights and days and weekends away from Jackie and from the kids. I know that's not easy. I really do, because I have a similar thing in a sense. But I want to say thank you on behalf of the residents of the Cape Flats. It's not my position to talk for them, but for those that will allow me to, I want to say thank you. And again, irrespective of political allegiance, etc., you're a good man. You're a hardworking man. You're a man who I didn't rehearse that question of you about what's the most important thing that you'd say to a gangster. But when you said that,
none of it was rehearsed.
No, none of it was rehearsed. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that just spoke to who the man is. You know, when the first thing you say is to a gangster, "You're loved." Yeah. I was almost in tears at that point in time. So thank you.
You're most welcome.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you.